This week on the 80s Emporium, Jessica takes a look at vampires, werewolves, and zombies. Also, find out which beloved sitcom actor got his start as a teenage werewolf, and which Academy Award-winning director made a western about vampires? Grab your wooden stake and silver bullets. The 80s Emporium starts now.
Dracula has been portrayed in film more than 200 times, but the 80s ushered in a new twist on the vampire genre. In the 1980s, vampires became cool. Tony Scott would later become known for his high-octane action films, but his directorial debut was this sexy and sleek vampire film. Starring Susan Sarandon, Catherine Deneuve, and David Bowie, The Hunger helped kick off the 80s vampire craze.
Wake up, sleepyhead, it's sunset.
The movie that was the most influential in starting the vampire movie boom of the 1980s was the horror comedy
Fright Night.
a love letter to the old classic horror films from Child's Play director Tom Holland. Roddy McDowall steals the show as the has-been movie actor Peter Vincent, who was named in honor of horror icons Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. Before Jim Carrey evolved into one of the biggest stars of the 90s, he was showing off his incredible acting and physicality in the vampire teen sex comedy Once Bitten. But Carrey wasn't the original choice for the role. The screenwriter originally wanted Michael J. Fox, but a producer doubted Fox's ability to carry a movie as a lead actor.
This is nuts.
But the most popular vampire film of the era wasn't released until 1987. The Lost Boys helped shift the cultural depiction of vampires from mysterious ancient beings to misunderstood teens. Directed by future Academy Award-winning director Kathryn Bigelow, in her first solo directorial effort, Near Dark is most notable for its striking visual style. And in a rarity for a movie of this nature, the word vampire is never spoken on screen. Oh no. Oh no. Oh God! The most well-known werewolf in all of cinema is undoubtedly Universal's 1941 monster movie, The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. But in the early 80s, there were plenty of these wild creatures roaming the cinemas under a full moon. The first of these films to be released was The Howling, directed by Joe Dante of Gremlins fame. A solid movie in its own right, it also is a love letter to the werewolves in cinema. There are many hidden references in the film, including the fact that most of the characters are named for directors who directed other werewolf movies. And cult horror director Roger Corman even makes an appearance. The Howling gave rise to 7 sequels, 4 of which came out in the 80s. In July of 1981, Michael Wadley directed Wolfen. Unlike the other films in our genre, the furry creatures here are not explicitly identified as werewolves, but rather as wolfens, shapeshifters who are able to change their bodies into wolves. The movie was one of the first films to use a thermal imaging effect to show the point of view of the monsters. This effect was made famous when it was utilized in Predator 6 years later. Only a few weeks after Wolfen, Universal released An American Werewolf in London. The horror comedy was the first movie ever to win an Oscar for Best Makeup. Besides the groundbreaking practical effects, the film is also known for its fairly upbeat soundtrack, featuring only songs that include the word moon. 1985's Teen Wolf, starring Michael J. Fox, was filmed before Back to the Future, but only released after the time travel comedy. Some countries, such as Brazil, hoping to capitalize on Back to the Future, renamed Teen Wolf to Boy from the Future. The film was a hit, grossing $80 million on a $1.2 million budget. And when you get numbers like that, the studios are going to want a sequel. Instead of Fox, the titular teen was replaced by a young Jason Bateman. But 1987's Teen Wolf 2 could not replicate the success of its predecessor. Oh, didn't see you there. The final subgenre that experienced a resurrection in the 1980s is the zombie movie. Zombies have been around in cinema as far back as 1932's White Zombie. But the genre was given new life in the late 60s with George A. Romero's groundbreaking film, Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead is almost universally acclaimed as the greatest zombie film ever made. The horror flick was filmed almost entirely in a mall in Pennsylvania, which still stands today and receives many visits by fans of the film. 7 years later, the third Romero film hit theaters, where zombies now run the world and humans are now the minority. While not as critically acclaimed as its predecessors, Day of the Dead was Romero's favorite of his trilogy. At the dawn of the decade, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell brought us indie hit The Evil Dead, in which a group of friends visiting a cabin in the woods accidentally read from the Book of the Dead and release ancient supernatural demons. Don't you hate it when that happens? Not all sequels can match its predecessor, but Evil Dead 2 isn't your average sequel. Instead of telling a straight horror story, Raimi decided to lower the scares and increase the laughs. The series has gained a cult following over the years, and it helped launch the careers of Campbell and Raimi, who recently revived the franchise with the television series Ash vs. Evil Dead. The 1989 adaptation of Pet Sematary was stuck in limbo for a few years because many Hollywood studios believed that Stephen King adaptations were going out of style. But desperate for content during a 1988 writer's strike, Paramount dusted off the screenplay and decided to make King film adaptation number 15. The Return of the Living Dead is notable for giving zombies a desire to specifically eat brains, something that no other zombie film had ever done to this point.
I thought you said if we destroyed the brain, it'd die. It worked in the movie!
When it comes to horror movies, there has never been a decade as influential as the 1980s. So this Halloween season, I encourage you to dust off an 80s classic or try something you've never seen before. I want to know what 80s horror film you're rewatching or watching for the first time this month. So shoot us a tweet or comment on YouTube and let us know. Unless your name is Clarence. Don't comment. If you like this video, please give us a like and follow us on social media. If you want to give your friends a treat or trick this Halloween, check out Stu Pollard on Cameo, who is currently only $25.
Not bad, not bad.
Have a happy Halloween and stay safe out there. After all, in horror movies, anything can happen.
Don't forget to watch part 1 of Horror Genres of the 1980s, where Jessica covers aliens, ghosts, and slasher films. Only on the 80s Emporium.
It's a wrap on your Ketchup Arm. Wrap on. Everybody clap out for Dan's Ketchup Arm. Dan's Ketchup Arm, ladies and gentlemen.
I can smell it. I can smell it.
It smells really good.
It's really delightful, actually.
Yeah.